and reading stories and different types of stylistic writing, more traditional, so it's all going to be like written as opposed to videos and that sort of thing. And you guys are going to be learning some specific narrative strategies that go along with that. And for today and tomorrow, we're moving into a movement known as magical realism. But before I start with the presentation, if you guys will open up Shobi, and there is a journal entry, because that is one of the things that we are going to be doing a lot of from today onward. Every day you will have a journal entry, and the purpose of the journal entry is to respond to these writing prompts that somehow are connected to the story. At the end of this semester, you guys are actually going to be creating your own narrative. You're going to be writing either a fictional piece or a memoir or something of that nature. So the purpose of these journal entries is every day throughout the term, you're going to be writing a little bit for a few minutes every day, so that when we get to that point where it is time for you to workshop and craft your own narrative, you'll have plenty of inspiration to work from. So go ahead and pull up the journal entry and respond to that for today.
Do we have kickoffs for the rest of the week?
Don't read it yet. Just respond to the journal entry. most of you are either done or finishing up. Still working move on ahead.
10:56.
So I'm gonna look up here. But we'll be going back to your journal entries a little bit later on. But so, like I said before, we are going into magical realism today and tomorrow. Does anybody have any clue, like how maybe magical realism, the term, might connect with your journal entry? Does anybody know what magical realism is, or want to guess what it might be based on the words magical and realism? Emily?
Something that takes place in like almost a normal world. It's somewhat real, but also has magical elements to it. So like Harry Potter or Percy Jackson.
Okay, so takes place in a normal setting, but has some magic or fantasy elements to it, like Harry Potter or Percy Jackson. That's actually a really good explanation of magical realism. So just judging by the name, realism sounds like what it is, right? You'll read a lot of stories that are very realistic. There's no magic. They are concerned with writing about common occurrences in everyday life, right? So when you add this magical to it, it all of a sudden changes it ever so slightly. So you still have kind of a landscape and a setting that is very normal and common, but you add a little bit of magic to it. You add a little bit of the fantastical elements. So look at these paintings here. Everybody see this? Okay, this is by an artist named Frida Kahlo. Hopefully a lot of you have heard of her. She's a very famous Mexican artist. And she did a lot of magical realistic paintings. So if you look at this painting, turn the light off so you can kind of see a little better. So tell me what you see or what's going on in this painting. Maybe more specifically, tell me the more realistic elements of this painting.
It's a deer that's being hunted. Sure was. But it's not like an actual deer. It's like a deer's body with a person's hair.
Okay. So it's a hunted deer, but the thing that makes it not realistic, that one element that makes it magical, is the fact that it's not a deer's head, but it's a person's face on the deer, right? Another example. Okay, this is by another artist that probably a lot of you have seen a lot of before, whether or not you are familiar with the name Gustav Klimt. He's most famous for painting a very decorative picture called The Kiss, which a lot of you have seen that. This one, what is realistic and what is fantastical about this painting? What do you see? Allie, you're an artist. What do you see that's realistic or fantastical about this painting? What would make this magical realism? You what? It's kind of tricky. This one's not quite as obvious as the last one. Yeah.
Because her dress was in the background. And you can't really tell which is which.
Okay, so it's her outfit and her dress blends in with the background, so you can't. It's almost like her outfit is a hybrid of the background and material, right?
You can still kind of say it's her dress.
Yeah. So kind of the boundaries between background and her outfit are blurred. What else about her dress might be considered more magical than realistic?
like different designs and shapes? There's like different designs and shapes.
So there's different designs and shapes in the dress. It's kind of hard to see from here, but if you look at the dress, you see, and behind her head, you see a lot of geometric shapes, like Omar said. A lot of triangles and circles and squares, and it's all gold. It's all very glittery gold, and the background's the same way. Is that a realistic dress? No. Like, do you think as he was sitting here painting this portrait of this lady, that she was wearing exactly that dress and the background looked exactly like that? Probably not. She was probably wearing some sort of basic structure of a dress like that, but he obviously went and incorporated all of these decorative gold shapes and made it so that it blends in with the background. I'm gonna have to
It's a,
Okay, so this painting here is called Spring. It's by Andrew Wyeth, who's a pretty famous American painter. Anybody want to talk to me about this painting? What do you see in the painting? Just what do you see?
Somebody's nails through the shoe. Somebody dead dog. Is that murder my heart red?
I feel like it's showing something like in the lot is like it's never when it's dying.
Okay, so the white is snow. So like winter is dying. So is the setting realistic? Like still in the grass?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Almost like a
No.
desert.
I feel like maybe it's
I don't think
So,
What about the man? Like, is he realistic looking?
No, he looks like he's not that.
Looks like he's melting.
Looks like he like
got built onto the like thing, whatever that is, grass or
Yeah.
platform or
Yeah.
ground.
So this is another example of magical realism because you've got kind of a natural setting of like a grassy hill, and even the man, he has a pretty, recognizable human, basic man shape, right? The thing that sets it apart is that he's covered in snow and it's melting like a patch of snow. So it's that one element of like fantasy, something that's just not really quite right, that makes it magical realism. So some characteristics of magical realism in both art, as we've seen, and in literature, we've got the fantastical elements, the real world setting, a heightened sense of mystery. So when we're looking at the paintings, were you wondering, like, why does a deer have a person's face? Like, what's the story there? Why, like, what's going on with this man, like, melting in the hill, in the grassy hill? What is the story about the woman with her, gilded gold decorative dress? And then a lot of the stories that you'll read, they're very mysterious. You read them and you wonder why. And a lot of times authors will leave out certain details in their magical realistic stories to do that very thing, to make you wonder about the story. Well, what's the next part of the story? I want to know the backstory of this character. Another characteristic of magical realism, it originated in Latin America. Latin American authors were, for the most part, still are the main proponents and the main writers.
May I see Leslie Cervantes in the clerk's office, please?
yes, ma'am.
Thanks.
Of magical realism. And there's a couple of reasons why. There was a quote that I saw the other day. Somebody said that magical realism is so prevalent in Latin American and Hispanic cultures because it is part of their culture. And it's funny because I was talking to another student and we were talking about stories, and he was telling me how his favorite stories that he heard growing up were stories that his grandparents and his parents told him of like real life legends that happened in their life that have just a little twist of the supernatural and magic about them. So I find that extremely interesting. So you'll see a lot of blending of folk tales, traditional folk tales, with more modern fiction. So I don't know if any of you have seen the movie Pan's Labyrinth. Fantastic movie. But it is a prime example of magical realism in film. You've got the story of a young girl in Spain. It's the middle of a war. It's very realistic. And then she discovers in the forest sort of like a magical existence, a magical world inhabited by these really terrifying monsters. But it's a blending of real life, young girl in Spain during the war, and the fantastical, sort of like this alternative existence of like monsters and magic. Okay. So some famous authors of magical realism, we got Gabriel Garcia Marquez, who we're going to read today. We've got Toni Morrison, who's not Hispanic, but I think most of the others are. We've got Jorge Luis Borges, Alan Hoffman, Elizabeth Allende, who we're going to read tomorrow. Salman Rushdie, I'm sure a lot of you have heard of him. All of these authors are very prolific, and they all pretty much primarily write in a magical realism way. Okay, and the author that we're going to study today is Gabriel Garcia Marquez. He's a Colombian writer. He is probably the most famous writer of magical realism. He actually died just a couple of years ago. But look at this particularly. He was the oldest of 12 children, so he was in a really big family. And he said that one of his favorite things to do growing up was to listen to the war stories of his grandfather. You know, he'd sit on his grandfather's knee, and his grandfather would just tell him of the adventures and experiences, and oftentimes brutal and violent experiences that he had during the war as a soldier. And on the other hand, the other stories he loved listening to were his grandmother's folk tales. So these are stories and folk tales that have been passed generation to generation. So his two most famous novels are Love, the Time of Cholera, and 100 Years of Solitude. So the Love and the Time of Cholera was actually made into a movie not so long ago, a couple of years ago. But these are two full-size novels that are magical realism. Okay, so right now, that's to give you a brief introduction to our author and magical realism. So if you will go on, 2 minutes? Okay. So if you can, this evening, on Shovey, there's a link, I think it's called Story Discussion Questions. There's a link to the story by and we will have some discussion questions, and we will discuss more of that story tomorrow. Okay. So have it read for me tonight, please.
I already did mine.